The cargo vessel Horizon's Edge drifted through the silent darkness of deep space, carrying medical supplies to the outer colonies. Captain Laura Bennett stood on the bridge, watching the stars pass by on the main view screen. It was supposed to be a routine mission, nothing exciting, nothing dangerous. But the universe had other plans. "Captain, we are picking up a distress signal," said the communications officer, a young woman named Rachel. Laura turned her attention to the console. The signal was weak, barely visible on their sensors. It came from a small ship drifting without power near the edge of the trade corridor. "Can you identify the vessel?" Laura asked. Rachel worked on her console for a moment before her face went pale. "It is a Sonari shuttle, Captain. Royal markings." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Sonari Empire. They were one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, proud and powerful. They looked down on younger species like humans. Relations between Earth and the Sonari had always been cold and distant. The Sonari considered humans to be primitive, barely worth their attention. "How many life signs?" Laura asked. 4, but they are very weak. Their environmental systems failed at least 3 days ago. Laura made her decision without hesitation. "Set a course to intercept. Prepare a rescue team." "Captain," her first officer spoke carefully, "the Sonari may not appreciate our interference. They have never accepted help from other species. They can complain after we save their lives," Laura replied firmly. "I will not let people die because of politics." Down in the maintenance section, Daniel Carter was finishing his shift when the announcement came through. All available personnel were needed for the rescue operation. Daniel was not a soldier or a diplomat. He was just a maintenance technician who fixed broken pipes and faulty wiring. But he had basic medical training, so he grabbed his kit and headed to the shuttle bay. The rescue team consisted of 12 people. They boarded a small transport and crossed the dark gap between the two vessels. Daniel felt his heart beat faster as they approached the Sonari shuttle. He had never seen aliens before, not in person. Earth was still new to the galactic community, and most humans lived their entire lives without meeting another species. The shuttle was beautiful despite its damage. Silver and elegant, covered in symbols that Daniel could not read. The rescue team cut through the airlock and entered the vessel. The air inside was thin and stale. Emergency lights cast everything in a dim red glow. They found the Sonari in the main cabin. 4 of them collapsed on the floor. Daniel had seen pictures of Sonari before, but nothing prepared him for the real thing. They were tall and slender, with silver blue skin that seemed to shimmer even in the weak light. Their features were sharp and elegant, almost too perfect to be real. 3 of them wore military uniforms. The 4th wore flowing robes of white and gold. Even unconscious, there was something regal about her. She was younger than the others, her face smooth and delicate. "They are severely dehydrated," the team medic announced after scanning them. 3 days without water. It is a miracle they are still alive. The rescue team began working quickly. They carried the Sonari back to the transport one by one. Daniel helped move the soldiers, their bodies surprisingly light despite their height. When he returned for the last one, the young female in the white robes, he noticed she was stirring. Her eyes opened slowly. They were violet, deep, and beautiful like gems. She looked at Daniel with confusion and fear. Her cracked lips moved, but no sound came out. She was too weak to speak. Daniel knelt beside her. He could see how much she was suffering. Her silver skin had turned pale and gray. Her breathing was shallow and painful. She needed water desperately. Without thinking, Daniel reached for the canteen on his belt. He always carried water with him, a habit from his childhood on the dry colony where he grew up. He unscrewed the cap and gently lifted her head. "Here," he said softly. Drink this." The Sonari female looked at him with wide eyes. For a moment, she seemed to hesitate. Something flickered in her expression. Something Daniel could not understand. But her thirst was too great. She opened her mouth and let him pour the water past her lips. She drank deeply, desperately. Daniel gave her all the water in his canteen. When it was empty, she lay back against his arm, breathing easier. Color began returning to her skin. "Thank you," she whispered, so quiet that Daniel barely heard her. "You are welcome," he replied with a gentle smile. "We are going to get you to our ship. You will be safe there." He lifted her carefully and carried her to the transport. She weighed almost nothing. Her hand gripped his sleeve weakly, as if she was afraid he might disappear. Daniel did not notice the other Sonari watching him. The soldiers had regained consciousness during the transfer. One of them, a tall male with hard eyes and a commander's insignia, stared at Daniel with an expression of absolute shock. The other, an older male in diplomatic robes, looked like he had witnessed something impossible. They said nothing during the journey back to the horizon's edge. Daniel assumed they were simply too weak to speak. He had no idea that what he had just done would change everything. Back on the human vessel, the Sonari were taken to the medical bay. Daniel helped settle the young female onto a bed before stepping back to let the doctors work. She was still holding onto his sleeve. When he gently pulled away, she looked at him with those violet eyes. "Your name," she said softly. "Tell me your name." "Daniel," he replied. "Daniel Carter." She nodded slowly, as if memorizing it. "I am Valera, third daughter of Emperor Kale Senekai." Daniel felt his blood run cold. A princess. He had just given water to an alien princess. He hoped he had not broken some kind of royal protocol. "Rest now, Your Highness," he said awkwardly. "The doctors will take care of you." He backed away and left the medical bay, eager to return to his normal duties. He had no idea that a simple act of kindness had just bound his fate to hers in ways he could never imagine. He had no idea that across the galaxy, ancient laws were stirring. He had no idea that by giving her water, he had changed the course of two civilizations. All he knew was that he had helped someone who needed it. That was enough for him. That was what humans did. But the Sonari knew better. And as High Commander Tonvan watched the human walk away, he felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt fear. Because the princess had accepted water from a human's hands. And nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. 2 days passed aboard the horizon's edge. The Sonari survivors recovered quickly under human medical care. Their bodies were strong, and with proper hydration, they regained their strength. But something strange hung in the air. The Sonari soldiers refused to speak with the human crew. They stayed in their quarters, silent and watchful. Only Ambassador Dreth, the older male in diplomatic robes, requested a meeting with Captain Bennett. Laura received him in her ready room. She offered him a seat and a drink, which he politely declined. His face was troubled, his eyes heavy with concern. "Captain Bennett," he began, "I must speak with you about a very serious matter." "Of course, Ambassador. How can I help?" Dreth was silent for a long moment. He seemed to be searching for the right words. Finally, he spoke. "Among my people, water is not simply a resource. It is sacred. We call it Velshara, the essence of life. Our ancestors came from a desert world where water was more precious than gold. To share water with another being is the greatest gift one can give." Laura nodded slowly. "I understand. Water has deep meaning in many cultures." "You do not understand," Dreth said, his voice heavy. "When a Sonari accepts water directly from another's hands, it creates a bond. We call it Velthan, the life debt. It is an ancient law older than our empire itself. The one who gives water becomes the master. The one who receives becomes the bound. Laura felt a chill run down her spine. What exactly are you saying, Ambassador? Your crew member, the one called Daniel Carter, gave water to Princess Valera from his own hands. She accepted it. By our most sacred law, she now belongs to him. She is bound to him until the debt is repaid or until he releases her. The captain stared at him in disbelief. That cannot be right. He was just trying to help her. He had no idea about your customs. Intent does not matter, Dreth replied sadly. The act is what binds. The Velthan has been invoked. It cannot be undone with words alone. Laura stood up and paced across the room. This was a diplomatic nightmare. A human maintenance worker now technically owned a princess of the Sinari Empire. The consequences could be catastrophic. What happens now? She asked. That depends on your crew member. If he rejects her publicly, the bond is broken, but she will be forever shamed. She will lose her status, her place in the royal family, everything. If he keeps her, the Empire will see it as an insult. A human holding a princess as property. There are those who will demand war. And if there is another way? Dreth shook his head. There are only 3 paths to end a Velthan. Death of the master, death of the bound, or a great act of sacrifice that balances the scales. None of these options are simple. Lavra knew she had to tell Daniel. She called him to her ready room and explained everything. She watched his face go from confusion to horror to disbelief. This has to be a mistake, Daniel said, his voice shaking. I just gave her water. That is all I did. How can that make her my property? That is insane. Different cultures have different laws, Lavra replied gently. What seems normal to us can have deep meaning to others. Then I will release her. I will tell her she is free. This whole thing is ridiculous. Ambassador Dreth, who had remained in the room, spoke up. If you do that, you will destroy her. A rejected Velthan marks the bound one as worthless. She will never recover from such shame. Her own family might disown her. Daniel ran his hands through his hair in frustration. So I cannot keep her and I cannot release her? What am I supposed to do? Before anyone could answer, the door to the ready room opened. Princess Valera walked in, followed by High Commander Torvan. She had changed from her damaged robes into a simple white dress. Her silver skin glowed with health, and her violet eyes were clear and focused. She looked like a completely different person from the dying woman Daniel had found. She walked straight to Daniel and stopped before him. Then, to everyone's shock, she lowered herself to one knee. Daniel Carter of Earth, she said in a clear voice, you gave me water when I was dying. You saved my life with your own hands. By the ancient laws of my people, I declare the Velthan. My life is yours. My service is yours. I belong to you now until the debt is paid or you set me free. Please get up, Daniel said quickly, reaching down to help her. You do not have to kneel to me. You do not have to do any of this. Valera rose but kept her eyes on his. The law is the law. I cannot pretend it does not exist. Then I release you. Right now. You are free. No. Valera and Torvan shouted at the same time. The princess grabbed Daniel's hand. You cannot. If you reject me, I will have nothing. My father will cast me out. I will be nameless and alone. Please, do not do this. Daniel saw the fear in her eyes. It was real and deep. Whatever strange laws her people followed, the consequences for her were serious. He could not hurt her like that. He had saved her life to help her, not to ruin it. Okay, he said softly. I will not reject you. But I am not going to treat you like property either. That is not how humans do things. Valera looked confused. Then what am I to you? Daniel thought for a moment. A guest. A friend, maybe. Someone I helped who is now stuck with me until we figure this out. We will find a way to fix this together. For the first time, Valera smiled. It was small and uncertain, but it was real. You are very strange, Daniel Carter. I have been told that before. High Commander Torvan stepped forward. This is not finished. The Emperor must be informed. When he learns what has happened, there will be consequences. You have no idea what forces you have set in motion, human. Captain Bennett straightened her shoulders. Then we will face those consequences when they come. For now, everyone on this ship is under my protection, including the princess. Torvan glared at her but said nothing. He turned and walked out of the room. Daniel looked at Valera, still holding her hand. I am sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I know, she replied. But it has happened. And whatever comes next, we will face it together. Is that not what you said? Daniel nodded. He had no idea how he was going to fix this mess. But he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to abandon her. That was not who he was. That was not what humans did. And somewhere in the depths of space, a message was already speeding toward the Scenari homeworld. The Emperor would soon know that his daughter belonged to a human, and the galaxy would never be the same. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours, every major civilization knew what had happened. A human had created a Velthon bond with a princess of the Scenari Empire. Diplomats scrambled to understand the implications. News channels broadcast endless debates. Some called it an insult to the Scenari. Others called it a fascinating accident. A few even called it the beginning of a new era. On the Scenari homeworld, the reaction was much more intense. The Imperial Palace erupted in chaos. Conservative factions demanded immediate action. How dare a primitive human lay claim to royal blood? This was an offense that could not be tolerated. They called for war, for punishment, for the human to be made an example. Other voices urged caution. The princess had accepted the water willingly. The Velthan was sacred law, and to violate it would be to spit on their own traditions. Besides, going to war over a maintenance worker seemed excessive. There had to be a better solution. Emperor Kale Senekai listened to all of them in silence. His face revealed nothing. Inside, his heart was torn. Valera was his youngest daughter, his secret favorite. He had always seen something special in her, a curiosity and kindness that reminded him of his late wife. Now she was bound to an alien, a human, a member of a species that his people consider barely civilized. He made his decision. He would go to the human ship himself. He would meet this Daniel Carter and judge him with his own eyes. Then he would decide what to do. Back on the horizon's edge, 5 Scenari warships dropped out of hyperspace and surrounded the cargo vessel. Captain Bennett was not surprised. She had been expecting this. She opened communications and agreed to wait for the Emperor's arrival. There was nothing else she could do. Daniel spent the waiting days with Valera. At first, their conversations were awkward. She was a princess raised in palaces, educated by the finest teachers, trained for diplomacy and leadership. He was a technician who fixed broken machines and had never finished his formal schooling. They seemed to have nothing in common. But slowly, they began to understand each other. Valera asked him about Earth, about human customs, about his life. Daniel told her about growing up on a dry colony world, about losing his parents young, about finding purpose in simple work. He was not ambitious or important. He just tried to be useful and kind. Valera found this fascinating. Among my people, everyone wants to be important. Everyone fights for status and power. The idea of being satisfied with a simple life is almost unheard of. Is that what you want? Daniel asked. Power and status? Valera was silent for a long moment. I do not know what I want. I have never been allowed to choose. My life has always been decided for me. Where I go, what I wear, who I speak to, everything is controlled. I am a princess, but I have never been free. Daniel felt a wave of sympathy. He could not imagine living like that. That sounds lonely. It is, she admitted. You are the first person who has ever asked me what I want. Everyone else only tells me what I must do. They talked about many things during those days. Daniel learned about Sonari history and culture. He read everything he could find in the ship's database. He wanted to understand her people, their laws, their values. If he was going to help Valera, he needed to know what he was dealing with. Valera learned about humans. She had always been taught that they were primitive and aggressive, dangerous creatures from a death world. But Daniel was nothing like that. He was gentle and patient. He listened when she spoke. He treated her like a person, not a possession. Your species confuses me, she said one evening. You are so young compared to us, yet you have spread so far. Your technology is inferior, yet you keep advancing. And you show kindness to strangers for no reason. Why did you give me water? You did not know who I was. You gained nothing from helping me. Daniel shrugged. Someone was dying. I had water. It was not complicated. But you could have kept the water for yourself. You could have let us die. No one would have blamed you. I would have blamed myself. That is the only thing that matters. Valera shook her head in wonder. You are a very strange species, Daniel Carter. You keep saying that, because it keeps being true. On the fifth day, a massive vessel dropped out of hyperspace. It was the Throne of Stars, the Emperor's personal flagship. It dwarfed everything else in the area. Captain Bennett received a transmission ordering the Horizon's Edge to prepare for the Emperor's arrival. Daniel felt his stomach twist with nerves. He was about to meet one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. A man who could order his death with a single word. A man whose daughter he accidentally owned by ancient law. Valera stood beside him. She had changed into formal robes, white and gold, marking her royal status. But her eyes were worried. My father is not cruel, she said quietly. But he is proud. He will see you as a threat to our family's honor. Be careful, Daniel. Be respectful. Do not give him a reason to harm you. What if he demands that I release you? Valera's face went pale. Then you must decide. My freedom from shame, or my freedom from you. Either way, I lose something. Daniel took her hand gently. I am not going to let anyone hurt you. I do not know how yet, but I will find a way. I promise. Valera looked at him with those violet eyes. Why? Why do you care what happens to me? You barely know me. I am nothing to you. You are not nothing, Daniel said firmly. You are a person who needs help. And helping people is what I do. It is what all humans do when we are at our best. The airlock opened. Imperial guards marched in, followed by Ambassador Dreth and High Commander Torvan. And behind them came Emperor Kale Senekai himself. He was tall, even for a Sonari, with silver skin and cold golden eyes. His presence filled the room like a weight. He looked at Daniel. He looked at his daughter. He saw their hands still clasped together. So, the Emperor said, his voice deep and ancient, you are the human who claims my daughter. Daniel straightened his shoulders. He was terrified, but he refused to show it. I do not claim her, Your Majesty. I helped her. There is a difference. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Is there? We shall see. Come with me, Daniel Carter. We have much to discuss. Daniel glanced at Valera. She nodded slightly. He released her hand and followed the Emperor toward the airlock. Whatever happened next would decide everything. The fate of a princess, the future of two species, all resting on the shoulders of a simple maintenance technician who had only wanted to give water to someone in need. But Daniel was not afraid. He had nothing to be ashamed of. He had done the right thing, and he would keep doing the right thing no matter what the Emperor decided. That was the human way. That was his way. And somewhere deep inside, Emperor Kale Senekai felt something he had not expected. He felt curious. What kind of being was this human who showed no fear and asked for nothing? Perhaps there was more to this primitive species than he had believed. Perhaps this meeting would be more interesting than he thought. The Throne of Stars was the largest ship Daniel had ever seen. Walking through its corridors felt like walking through a palace. The walls were covered in silver and gold, decorated with symbols and art that told stories thousands of years old. Guards stood everywhere, their faces hard and suspicious. Daniel felt very small and very human. Emperor Kale Senekai led him to a private chamber. It was a vast room with a high ceiling and windows that looked out into the stars. The Emperor sat on a throne carved from something that looked like crystal. He gestured for Daniel to stand before him. "Leave us," the Emperor commanded. The guards hesitated, then departed. Ambassador Dreth remained by the door, a silent witness. The Emperor studied Daniel for a long moment. His golden eyes seemed to pierce right through him. "Tell me, human, what do you know of the Velthon?" "I have learned what I could," Daniel replied. "It is a sacred bond created when someone gives water to another. The giver becomes the master, the receiver becomes bound. It cannot be broken easily. And yet you wish to break it. I wish for Valera to be free and happy. If breaking the bond accomplishes that, then yes. But from what I understand, a simple rejection would destroy her. I will not do that." The Emperor leaned forward slightly. "You care about her happiness?" "Of course I do. She is a person, not a possession. I do not want to own her. I want her to have a good life." "Then accept my offer." The Emperor raised his hand, and a holographic display appeared. It showed images of wealth beyond imagination. Planets, ships, technology, resources. "Release her through the ceremonial rejection, and all of this is yours. You will be the richest human in the galaxy. You will have everything you could ever want." Daniel looked at the display. It was tempting, he had to admit. A part of him wanted to accept. With that much wealth, he could help so many people. He could build hospitals, fund colonies, feed the hungry. He could do so much good. But then he thought of Valera. He thought of her fear, her loneliness, her hope. If he rejected her, she would lose everything. Her family would abandon her. She would be marked as worthless forever. All the wealth in the galaxy was not worth that. "No," Daniel said quietly. "I refuse." The Emperor's face showed surprise for just a moment. "You refuse? Do you understand what you are turning down?" "I understand perfectly. But I also understand what the ceremonial rejection would do to your daughter. It would shame her forever. She would lose her place in your family. She would be nothing. I will not do that to her. Not for any price." The Emperor rose from his throne. He walked closer to Daniel, towering over him. "You would sacrifice wealth beyond measure for the honor of an alien princess. I would sacrifice anything to avoid hurting someone who has done nothing wrong. Valera did not choose this. She was dying, and she drank water because she had to live. There was no crime in wanting to survive. She should not be punished for it." For a long moment, the Emperor said nothing. His face was unreadable. Then, slowly something changed in his expression. It was not anger. It was not contempt. It was something else entirely. "You have studied our culture," the Emperor said. "You know our customs. How is this possible? Humans have had contact with us for less than 50 years. I read everything in our ship's database, Daniel admitted. I wanted to understand. If I'm going to help Valera, I need to know what I'm dealing with. And what have you learned? Daniel took a deep breath. I learned that the Velthon can be transformed. There is a third option, beyond death and rejection. If the one who gave water proves themselves worthy through a great act of sacrifice, the bond changes. It becomes an alliance instead of ownership. Both parties stand as equals. The Emperor's eyes widened. You know of the path of transformation? I know it exists. I know it requires a trial of some kind. I do not know the details. The Emperor returned to his throne. He sat in silence for a moment, thinking. The path of transformation has not been invoked in over 1,000 years. No alien has ever attempted it. It is reserved for the worthy, those who have proven their strength and honor. Then let me prove myself. Daniel stepped forward. Give me the trial. If I succeed, the Velthon transforms. Valera and I become equals, allies, not master and servant. Our peoples become connected through partnership, not ownership. If I fail, I die, and the bond dies with me. Either way, Valera is free. You would risk your life? I would risk anything for the right outcome. Is that not what the trial is meant to test? Whether someone is willing to sacrifice for others. Emperor Kale Senekai stared at Daniel. In all his centuries of life, he had never met anyone quite like this human. He was small and weak and came from a primitive species. Yet he spoke with a conviction that many Senari warriors lacked. He had been offered unimaginable wealth and turned it down without hesitation. He had been threatened with death and did not flinch. The trial is called the Path of Burning Sands, the Emperor said finally. It takes place on our homeworld. You must cross the desert of souls alone, without technology, carrying only water. It is a journey of 3 days through deadly heat, dangerous creatures, and terrible isolation. Many Senari have died attempting it. No alien has ever survived. I accept, Daniel said without hesitation. You do not understand. This is not a test of strength. It is a test of character. The desert will break you. It will strip away everything you are and reveal what lies beneath. If there is any weakness in your soul, any selfishness, any cowardice, you will die. Then I will show you what lies beneath. I will show you who I really am. The Emperor stood again. He walked to Daniel and looked down at him. Why? Why would you do this for my daughter? She is nothing to you. Your species is nothing to mine. Why sacrifice yourself for someone you barely know? Daniel met his gaze without flinching. Because it is the right thing to do. Because she needs help, and I can help her. Because that is what humans do. We protect each other, even when it costs us everything. Even when the person we protect is a stranger. Even when no one will ever thank us for it. That is who we are. The Emperor was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, he smiled. It was a cold smile, but there was something else in it too. Something that might have been respect. Very well, Daniel Carter. I accept your proposal. You will face the path of burning sands. If you succeed, you will be the first alien ever to do so. The Velthon will transform, and my daughter will stand beside you as an equal. If you fail, you will die in the desert, and this incident will be forgotten. Daniel nodded. When do I begin? Tomorrow at sunrise. Rest tonight. Say your goodbyes. You may not get another chance. Guards escorted Daniel back to the horizon's edge. Valera was waiting for him. When she saw his face, she knew something had happened. What did he say? She demanded. What did you do? I am going to face a trial. Something called the Path of Burning Sands. If I survive, the Velthon transforms. We become equals. Valera's face went white. No, You cannot. No alien has ever survived the path. You will die. Maybe. But at least I will die trying to do the right thing. That is better than living as a coward. Valera grabbed his hands. Tears were forming in her violet eyes. Why? Why are you doing this for me? Daniel smiled gently. Because you asked me what kind of person I am. This is my answer. I am the kind of person who helps others, no matter the cost. I am human. And this is what humans do. Valera pulled him into an embrace. She held him tightly, trembling. Thank you, Daniel Carter. Thank you for being exactly who you are. Daniel held her back. Tomorrow he would face certain death. Tonight he had a friend. And that was enough. The desert of souls stretched endlessly before Daniel. Red sand dunes rose and fell like frozen waves. The sky above burned white with the heat of twin suns. Nothing moved. Nothing lived. It was a place of death, beautiful and terrible. Daniel stood at the starting point, wearing simple cloth robes provided by the Sonari. He carried no technology, no weapons, no equipment. Only a single container of water hung from his belt. It was enough for 3 days if he was careful. Barely enough. Behind him stood the Emperor, Princess Valera, and hundreds of Sonari witnesses. This was a public event, broadcast across the Empire. Everyone wanted to see the human face the ancient trial. Most expected to see him die. The path ends at the Valley of Ancestors, the Emperor announced. 3 days march through the desert. Reach the valley, and you pass the trial. 4, and you become part of the sand forever. Daniel turned to look at Valera one last time. She was trying to be strong, but he could see the fear in her eyes. He gave her a small smile and a nod. Then he turned and walked into the desert. The first day was brutal. The heat was unlike anything Daniel had ever experienced. Even on his dry colony world, it had never been this hot. Every breath burned his lungs. Every step drained his strength. He walked slowly, conserving energy, sipping water only when absolutely necessary. He thought about his life as he walked. His childhood on the colony. His parents who died when he was young. The years of struggling alone, learning to fix things, learning to survive. He had never been special. He had never done great things. He was just a man who tried to be decent in a universe that did not care. But maybe that was enough. Maybe that was the point. As the first sun set, Daniel found shelter beneath a rock formation. He allowed himself a small drink of water, then closed his eyes. He dreamed of Valera, of her smile, of the hope in her voice when she said they would face this together. He could not let her down. He would not let her down. The second day brought new challenges. Strange creatures emerged from the sand, drawn by his scent. They were like serpents with too many eyes and teeth like needles. Daniel remembered what he had read about the desert. These creatures were called sand wraiths. They were not attacking him. They were testing him. If he showed fear, they would strike. If he remained calm, they would let him pass. Daniel walked steadily forward. His heart was pounding, but he did not run. He did not panic. He kept his eyes forward and his breathing even. One by one, the sand wraiths lost interest and slithered away. By the second evening, Daniel was badly dehydrated. His water was almost gone. His lips were cracked, his skin burned red by the suns. But he kept moving. He kept fighting. Every step brought him closer to the end. On the third day, something unexpected happened. Daniel crested a dune and found a child lying in the sand. It was a young Sonari, a boy no more than 10 years old. His silver skin was gray and cracked. His eyes were closed. He was dying of thirst. Daniel knelt beside him. The boy stirred weakly. "Help me," he whispered. "Please." Daniel looked at his water container. There was barely enough left for himself. If he gave it to the child, he would not survive the remaining distance. The valley was still hours away. Without water, the desert would kill him. He thought about everything that had happened. He thought about Valera, about the trial, about what it meant to be human. He had told the Emperor that humans protect others, even when it cost them everything. He had said that was who they were. Now the universe was asking him to prove it. Daniel unscrewed the container and lifted the boy's head. "Here," he said softly. "Drink." He gave the child all of his remaining water. Every last drop. The boy drank desperately, life returning to his silver skin. When the container was empty, Daniel set it aside and stood up. "Can you walk?" he asked. The boy nodded. Together, they began moving toward the valley. The final hours were the hardest of Daniel's life. The heat crushed him. Thirst clawed at his throat. His vision blurred and his legs trembled. But he kept walking. He held the boy's hand and pulled him forward. He refused to stop. He refused to give up. The twin suns began to set. The valley appeared ahead, a dark line against the red sky. Daniel could see figures waiting there. So close, so very close. He collapsed 50 steps from the finish line. His body simply gave out. He had nothing left. The sand was cool against his face, and he thought it would be a good place to rest. Just for a moment. Just to close his eyes. The boy tugged at his arm. "Get up. Please get up. We are almost there." Daniel tried. He pushed himself to his hands and knees. But his strength was gone. He could not stand. This was it. He had failed. The boy did something Daniel did not expect. He grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled it over his small shoulders. Then he started walking, dragging Daniel with him. Step by step, inch by inch, the child pulled the man toward the valley. They crossed the finish line together. The Sonari witnesses stood in stunned silence. They had seen everything. They had watched the human give his water to the child. They had watched him sacrifice his own survival to save another. They had watched the child carry him across the line. Emperor Kale Senekai stepped forward. His face was unreadable. "You passed the trial, but you did not complete it alone. The child helped you." Daniel looked up weakly. The trial was about character, about what lies beneath. "You saw what lies beneath me. I gave my water away. I chose someone else's life over my own. Is that not what you wanted to see?" The emperor was silent. Then he turned to the child. "What is your name, young one?" "Van, your majesty. I was sent into the desert to test him. You told me to pretend to be dying." A murmur ran through the crowd. This was part of the trial. The child was never in real danger. It was all a test. "You knew you would die if you gave him your water," the emperor said to Daniel. "Yet you gave it anyway. Why?" Daniel managed to smile. "Because that is what the water was always for. Someone who needed it more than me. That is why I gave it to your daughter. That is why I gave it to the boy. Water is not meant to be hoarded. It is meant to be shared." The emperor stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. It was a deep, warm sound, nothing like his cold demeanor before. In 1,000 years, no one has ever answered that way. "You have passed the path of burning sands, Daniel Carter. You have proven your worth." Valera ran forward and dropped to her knees beside Daniel. She took his hand in hers. "You did it! You impossible, stubborn, wonderful human." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Does this mean we are equals now?" "It means more than that." The emperor's voice rang out. "The Velthon is transformed. You are no longer master and servant. You are partners, allies, bound by choice instead of law. And through you, our peoples are connected." This human has shown us something we had forgotten. True strength is not about power. It is about sacrifice. It is about giving when you have nothing left. He raised his hand, and the crowd fell silent. Let it be known across the galaxy. Humanity is worthy. They have earned the respect of the Sonari Empire. Let this day mark the beginning of a new alliance, built not on conquest or fear, but on kindness. On water shared between strangers. Valera helped Daniel to his feet. He leaned on her, exhausted but smiling. I told you we would figure it out. She laughed through her tears. You are the strangest person I have ever met. Is that good or bad? She looked at him with those violet eyes. It is wonderful. I do not belong to you anymore, Daniel Carter. I stay because I choose to. I stay because you taught me what it means to be free. Daniel held her close. Around them, humans and Sonari began to mingle, talking, laughing, discovering each other. A new chapter had begun, and across the stars, the story spread. The tale of a human who gave water to a dying princess and changed the galaxy. Not through weapons or power, but through simple, stubborn kindness. That was the human way, and the universe was better for it.